Sisters, in this seminar now on scripture and apostolic spirituality, I want to suggest what I call a measured response to COVID-19 pandemic. And my presentation will be divided into 4 parts. In the first part, I will give a brief perspective of the present situation. In the second part, I will give a variety of responses that have been given, that are being given. In the third part, I will suggest a measured response which we can give to this pandemic. And in the final 4th part, I will suggest a practical lesson for life. And so we move on to the first part, what I call a brief perspective. Sisters, it is likely that you may have heard this term or this phrase or this sentence: we are all in the same boat. And I want to make a correction to that, because I do not believe that we are in the same boat. What I believe and what I think and what is the reality according to me is that we are in the same storm. That means every one of us, no matter in which part of the world we might be, whether we are in a city, whether we are in a village, whether we are in a town, every single one of us is affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, even as we are affected, the affection and what happens to us is quite different, because we are in different boats. So more correctly, we must say, we are all in the same storm. Yes, the storm of COVID-19, the storm of being infected and affected by the coronavirus, but we are in different boats. And what do I mean by we are in different boats? Very clearly, some are cruising along in cruise ships. You will read so often in the papers that the concern of many of those who are elite, the concern of many of those who are rich and have a lot of money is how to take care of their health, what exercise to do, when is the gym going to open, whether to walk on the road, whether to lift this weight or that weight, what exactly to eat, how much to eat, what are the pulses, what gives protein, what gives carbohydrates. This is the concern very clearly. So these are the people who are in the cruise ships. There are many others, the upper middle class and even the middle class, who I would say are in catamarans. There is a safety. They are living in their flats. They have rooms in their flats. In case one person in the flat is affected, they can go into isolation, because in some of these homes, there are 2 and 3 and 4 rooms. There are others who are living in chawls, and these are finding it much more difficult, because the storm is much more powerfully hitting these than it is hitting the others. And very sadly, and very poignantly, and very unfortunately, there are some who are in rafts. And many of these who are in rafts, do not even have a paddle. And so I do not think that it is correct to say that we are in the same boat. No, no. We are in the same storm, yes. But even as we are in the same storm, we are in different boats. The poor are in those boats which are being badgered by the waves, and they are being subsumed by the waves. They do not have a response. They are unable to respond. They do not have the strength to respond. And their concerns are, where am I going to get my next meal from? Not whether the meal contains proteins and carbohydrates, not whether the meal will be fattening or less fattening. We are not concerned about those things. Those are the concerns of the elite. Those are the concerns of the super rich. How much exercise am I going to get? So the poor are getting the exercise that they need, and all the exercise that they need because they have to work. Even today, we read in the papers how there are some, in the old days, they would travel for 1.5 hours to reach their place of work. And today, because there are no modes of transport as they used to be, they are traveling for 4 hours just to reach the place of work, working in that place for 8 to 10 hours. So 14 hours have gone, and 4 hours once again to return home. 18 hours out of 24 are spent in traveling and working. Then where is the time to count the carbohydrates? Where is the time to count the proteins? Where is the time to get agitated about anything else except wondering how to fill one's stomach? How to go to bed with a fairly full stomach. Not really a full stomach, because very few of them can afford those full stomachs, but with a fairly full stomach, which will enable them to get up in the morning on the next day and begin the routine again and again and again. And so once again, we can say that we are in the same storm, but we must remember that even as we are in the same storm, we are in different boats. There have been, and there are, a variety of responses to COVID. And there are some who think it is a punishment from God. There are the religious fanatics. There are fundamentalists in every single religion. They are spokespersons they imagine of God. And so very clearly they know that God is punishing us because of our sinfulness, because of the fact that we have been sinful, because of the fact that the world is being corrupted by dishonesty and by injustice and by oppression. So God has decided to punish the world. There are others who think that because we have destroyed the environment, because we have not cared for Mother Earth as we have had to care for Mother Earth, because we have polluted our habitat, our environment, our beautiful home, because we have polluted it so badly, that is why we are being punished. So nature is retaliating. Nature is responding. Nature is giving us the consequences that we must face because of the fact that we have destroyed nature, that we have not used nature, but we have abused nature. And this is basically why we are suffering at this moment. If we had to take care of our earth, if we had to nurture our world, if we had to really care for the home in which we live, we would not have to go through this tremendous challenge. Others are very clear that the virus became live and became evident and was created in a Chinese laboratory. Very clearly, the Chinese have the biggest hand to play in this virus. It is they who are responsible for spreading this virus, and the World Health Organization, which is supposed to be a body which is above every nation, which is looking after the good of all nations, has now pandered to the Chinese. And so the World Health Organization is on the side of the Chinese, and the World Health Organization is also responsible. There are others who say our governments, each country, is doing a fantastic job, and others who say the government is doing a miserable job. If only the government had planned properly, if only the lockdown had been done in stages, if only the lockdown had been well thought of, if only we had lovely medical facilities, if the government had built hospitals instead of building other things, we would have been saved today. And still others say big businesses have become selfish. They are thinking of production. Our world is now a concrete jungle, and the big businessmen and women think only of money, and so therefore we must punish them. And so these are responses. If God is love, some say, how can God allow this? In Jesus, the Christians say, God has been revealed as unconditional, as eternal love. So how is it possible that God will allow something like this to happen to those whom he loves, whom God cares for? And others say, if you say God is powerful, God can do everything, there is nothing which is beyond God's purview, then why does God not act now? How much longer must we suffer? How much longer must we go through this ordeal? How much more crosses can we carry? And those who want to remain once again as spokespersons for God will say, God's ways are not our ways. So far as the heavens are from the earth, so far are God's ways from our ways. We cannot question God. Why? Because God will act when God has to act. And yet, the reality is this, that there is no rescue, no matter what kind of God you believe in. There is no rescue for the millions of poor who go to bed hungry, who do not know where the next meal is coming from. There is no rescue for the frontline workers, the doctors, the nurses, the police personnel, the municipal authorities, the sanitation workers, and the millions of other frontline workers of all kinds and types. There is no rescue for them when they contract COVID-19, simply because they have been exposed to those who have been infected. There is no rescue. And God does not speak to the hundreds and thousands who walked hundreds and even thousands of kilometers only to see the face of a loved one, to fall at a loved one's feet, to take the blessings of a loved one. And sadly, when these reached their homes after walking and struggling and trudging for hundreds and sometimes thousands of kilometers, there was nothing there which they had to go back to. There was not even a square meal to eat. There was not even water enough for them to have a bath. There is no rescue for thousands who are dying of COVID. There is no rescue for their families. There is no rescue for those who cannot say a decent goodbye to a loved one. There are those who are in one city, and a loved one, a member of the family, a parent, a sibling, a wife, a husband, a child, dies in another city or another state, another place from which they are, and they cannot travel just to see and to wish the person goodbye. And so, how must we respond? My own response is this. We say, let God remain God. Let God remain where God has to be. We need to ask ourselves about our response. How am I going to respond to the situation in which I find myself? The forced lockdown was called on the 24th of March, 2020. And in the coming week, on coming Wednesday, coming Thursday, it will be 6 months since this lockdown was first called. There was the lifting up of the lockdown 1, lifting up of the lockdown 2, lifting up of the lockdown 3, lifting up of lockdown 4. However, every time the lockdown was lifted up, we found that the number of cases increased. And the only thing which is happening today is this, that the number of cases are increasing every single day, and the number of deaths are increasing every single day. And so we ask ourselves, what would be our response? And one response at the beginning was confusion. When the lockdown was called on the 24th of March 2020, very few of us knew what it would mean. And we thought, in a month's time, it's going to be okay. After 1 month, Easter is coming for us as Christians. Other feasts are coming for the Muslims and the Hindus and those of other faiths, and we will be able to celebrate our feast. Yes, things will go back to normal. So there was confusion. And slowly we realized that on the 14th of April was Easter, and it was not possible to even go to church to celebrate the risen Christ. And then there were questions in our minds, and the main question we asked was, when is this lockdown going to end? And initially, everyone thought it would be a month, so at least by the 24th of April, we will be able to go back. Things will move once again. And 24th of April came and went, and 24th of May came and went, and 24th of June came and went, and 24th of July came and went, and then slowly there was now anger. There was agitation, there was frustration, there was despondency, and in many, this led to a loss of faith. Every single religious leader, whether Christianity, whether Hinduism, whether Islam, whether Zoroastrianism, whether Sikhism, whether Buddhism, whether Jainism, every single religious leader had his or her own theory. But none of those theories made any sense to anyone, including them. And with so many, there is a loss of faith. And so what do I suggest? as I said, my own suggestion is let God be God. We don't bring God into the picture at the moment, but for my own life, I accept the situation. The first thing anyone will tell you is that when you are faced with a challenging situation, when you are faced with a situation from which you see there is no out, I cannot solve this myself, the first thing that you must do is accept it in your mind, in your heart, and in your body, and say to yourself, this is my situation and I accept it totally. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to say it does not exist. I'm not going to be any other kind of response. I am going to give a response where I accept it. And because I accept it, I'm going to look at it as a challenge. It is a challenge which I will accept, and a challenge which I will accept with open arms. A challenge which I will accept with an open heart. So I will look at this as a challenge, not as a problem, not as an obstacle, not as something which will prevent me from being the kind of person that I am. And so I look upon it as a challenge. And how do I look upon it as a challenge? I begin to take one day at a time. And even as I speak and I say one day at a time, I would suggest not one day at a time, but one moment of one day at a time. And if you realize this, and if you are given the grace to take one moment of one day at a time, then you'll realize that no agitation, there is no despondency, there is no negativity, there is no giving into despair, there is no losing hope, because you're living from one moment to the next. And you're living so fully in the now. You are doing what you are meant to do. And then you will really experience a peace, and your faith will become stronger and stronger and stronger. So what is required is acceptance of the present situation. Do not deny it. We do not know when the vaccine will be ready. Each one has their own theories. Let it come when it has to come. And it will come when it has to come. You and I can do nothing to hasten it unless we are researchers. If we were involved in the production of the vaccine, then maybe we work harder, we work stronger, and so on, and see how we can do it. But if we are not, if we do not have the ability to come out with a vaccine, what we have the ability to is to accept and to say, I look upon this time, I look upon this situation as a challenge. It is not an obstacle. It is not a hurdle. It is not a problem. It's a challenge, and it is an opportunity. And I will look upon it as a challenge if I develop the quality of taking one moment of one day at a time. Then I experience a very deep serenity, a very deep tranquility, a very deep peace. If you go through the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, verses 35 to 41. Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41. You notice there that there is a COVID-19 like situation in the boat. And there are two characters. Two characters means one is the disciples altogether, and the other is Jesus. And the disciples, if you notice, are exactly in this situation. There is confusion in the disciples' mind. There are questions. They come and ask the Lord, and they push the Lord when he's sleeping. Do you not care, Master, Rabbi? Do you not care? We are perishing. They question the Lord. And when is this going to end? And they are angry with the Lord and they lose faith. So the disciples are giving us a very, very clear lesson on what our response must not be. Mark 4:35 to 41. The wind and the storm are a metaphor for COVID. And the disciples in this COVID-19 situation, in the storm on the lake, are exactly like this. They are confused. There are questions in their mind. They ask, when is it going to end? They are upset with the Lord. They are angry with the Lord, and they lose faith. And there is the Lord. And what is the Lord doing? The Lord is serene. The Lord is sleeping. His head is on a pillow. Why? Because the Lord has accepted. The Lord looks on it as a challenge. The Lord takes one moment or one day at a time. The Lord is at peace. And the Lord is faithful. So this storm on the lake, which is exactly like a COVID-19 situation, is a very beautiful text which we can keep looking at to give us an insight into how the disciples, and we involved like the disciples, respond so very often, and how the Lord responds, and how the Lord would expect us as his disciples to respond. And so I am going to suggest in the third part what I term as a measured response. A response which I would like to believe is a response which will be helpful after we make a reflection on a few realizations. And the first realization is this: that life is fragile. Life is temporary. Life is impermanent. And if life is impermanent, then everything else is impermanent. And all that I was concerned about, all that I was so agitated about, all that I was so upset about, all that is temporary. It is passing. It is not permanent. It will not remain. Now, this realization must lead me to live fully and totally in this moment. And why must it lead me to live fully and totally in this moment? Because I never know if I'm going to live till the next moment. In Luke chapter 12, verses 1 following, the Lord tells a beautiful parable of what we call the rich fool. And the rich fool was a man whose fields were doing wonderfully well. And because his fields were doing wonderfully well, he was getting a lot of crops, he was storing them in his barns. He began to say to himself, oh, my fields are doing so well. I'm getting so much of crop in my fields. I'm going to build bigger barns and bigger barns and bigger barns and bigger barns. And I'm going to say to myself, take it easy, relax. Now he's planning for the future. Rather, not so much planning, but he's obsessed. And the Lord says to him, you fool, tonight I'm going to call you. So why didn't you enjoy then what you had? Why were you waiting to build bigger barns and then enjoy this moment? If I enjoy this moment, if I live fully in this moment, there are no regrets. So my motto must be, and this is a motto I suggest to you to repeat to yourself every single day when you get up in the morning, and take it up in your examen. And this is the motto: no regrets about the past. No obsession with the future. Only a living totally in the present. I repeat, no regrets about the past. No obsession with the future. Only a living totally in the present. Now, I can learn from the past, surely, so that I don't repeat the mistakes of the past. So I learn from the past for the present, surely. I plan for the future, yes. I plan in the present for the future, yes. But I don't have regrets, nor do I have obsession. This is how I respond to the realization that life is fragile and temporary. Another realization is this, that we have made tremendous progress. We have been able to go to the moon. We have been able to send spaceships into space. We've been able to do a number of beautiful things with science and with technology. We have. However, a dead virus, the novel coronavirus, does not have a life of its own. It is a dead virus. This dead virus can control us totally. So what is this progress that we are talking about? What is this advancement that we are talking about? What is this movement forward that we are talking about? It has all come to naught. It is nothing. In the play Hamlet by William Shakespeare, there is a dialogue between Hamlet and his friend Horatio. And in one of the dialogues, Hamlet says to Horatio, "There are more things in heaven and on earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophies. There are more things in heaven and on earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophies." Means that yes, you may make tremendous progress. You may think you have advanced very far, but there are many, many, many things that you will still not know and still not be able to do. And one of those is this, that God will be God, and we will always be human. We may make attempts to be God. We may try to be God, but we never will. The great mystic, the great philosopher, the great theologian, Thomas Aquinas, wrote a 5-volume Summa Theologica. 5 volumes, huge like this. Each volume is huge and used in seminaries even today. Thomas Aquinas, a great man, a great mystic, a great saint. After he wrote his 5-volume Summa Theologica, he knelt down after he wrote. And in that Summa Theologica, he also has a piece where he has 5 proofs for God's existence, which are still used by philosophers even today. But after he wrote all of that, he knelt down and said, about God, the only thing we can say is we do not know. About God, the only thing we can say is we do not know. So God will remain God. We are blessed. We are blessed because Jesus has revealed the face of God to us. And if there is one face of God that Jesus has revealed, it is the face of God of unconditional love, and the main commandment, or you might say the only commandment which Jesus gave, was love your neighbor as yourself. And in doing so, you are loving God. And that is why, if I have to relate with God, I must realize that I am my brothers and my sisters' keeper. I cannot say like Cain says to God, when God asks Cain, where is your brother? And Cain says, how should I know? Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, you are your brothers and sisters' keeper. Because this is the only commandment which Jesus has given us, and the only way in which we can relate with God, in which we can experience this love of God. And you may ask, who is my brother or sister? And Jesus once again provides the answer. And the answer is the poor. Because they are the ones who are especially vulnerable. They are the ones for whom we must accept responsibility. So the realization that life is fragile gives me the grace to live one moment at a time. The realization that we have made tremendous progress says to me, yes, but there is still a long way to go. The realization leads to the fact that we let God remain God. And we remember that we are human. And how then can we relate with this God whom we let remain God? How can we touch this God? How can we talk with this God? How can we converse with this God? By being our brothers and sisters' keepers, and especially, primarily, mainly the poor. And finally, this strong realization, and the reason why I have brought it last, is because for me, it is the most important. And if I were asked to summarize the learnings of the COVID-19 pandemic in one word, I would say it is interdependence. The COVID-19 pandemic has taught us not only that we are dependent on one another. This we knew. We didn't act as if we knew, but this we knew, at least in our minds. But now it has taught us that we are interdependent. What do I mean? It means if I cough, you are infected. If I sneeze, you are infected. If I touch you, you are infected. So this is the level of interdependence. That means there is no one who is foreign to me. There is no one who is an outsider to me. There is no one who is a stranger to me. Every single person and the whole of creation, not only human beings, but every single person within creation, the trees and the plants and the seas and the birds and the animals, and every single creature, inanimate, animate, I am dependent on and they on me. And so, how do we respond? In this slide, I'm going to suggest an overarching response that you must keep in mind. And I'm going to suggest it through the response of Jesus, because I think that the disposition which Jesus shows is the disposition which every one of us must have. And so, what is the disposition? What is the context? In Matthew chapter 9, verses 32 to 34, Jesus works a miracle. And the miracle that he works is of healing a deaf and dumb man. So he makes the deaf man hear, and the man who's also dumb, he makes him speak. So the man who was deaf and dumb, could not hear, could not speak, is now able to both hear and speak. And after this miracle, there are two opposite responses to the same stimulus, to the same miracle. And one group who sees the miracle are taken up. They are stunned. They respond by saying, "We have never seen anything like this." So they are positively disposed to the miracle and to the one who performed the miracle. There is another group who witnesses the same stimulus, who have seen that the man who was unable to hear and speak is now able to hear and speak. And they respond by saying, "He casts out demons by the prince of demons, by the ruler of demons." And so the question is, which group is correct? Which group is wrong? And before you can answer, I would say, both groups are correct from their perspective, from their view, from the way in which they look at things. So one group which looks at it positively will respond positively, "We have never seen anything." Another group who responds in another way, "He casts out demons by the ruler of demons." So what is so great about that? And so my question to you is not so much which group is correct, which group is wrong, because both are correct and both are wrong. My point to you is what Jesus does in the next verse. What I just said to you was in Matthew chapter 9, verses 32 to 34. And the response of Jesus is the next verse immediately. And what is the response of Jesus? So Jesus very likely heard this accolade. "We have never seen anything like this." The people who were taken up. And Jesus also very likely heard the negative. "He casts out demons by the ruler of demons." However, Jesus' response is to continue doing what he was doing without being elated at the response of those who were praising him, and without being depressed or despondent by the response of those who were criticizing him. Because what Matthew will tell us, then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and every sickness. In other words, Jesus does not stop what he was doing because people praised him or because people criticized him. He did not stop what he was doing. He continued, he kept on keeping on. And so very clearly, Jesus is an example to us into what we and how we must respond. And so now I'm going to suggest to you the ways, keeping this overarching frame in mind of Jesus, who does what he has to do without letting criticism affect him, without letting accolades affect him. And so this is the question which all of our lives must provoke those who profess to be disciples of Jesus. And these three questions are: first, who are you? The second is that you do these things. And the third, that you do them in this way. So the three questions are: who are you? That you do these things, and that you do them in this manner, in this way. So how would I define these three? I would define them first as identity. Who are you? Yes, you are an FMM. You are a handmaid of Jesus. You are belonging to this congregation, that congregation. That is not so much the point. Nobody, sisters, should recognize you just because you wear a habit, just because you wear a sari, just because you have a cross around your neck. No. No, if they recognize you only because of the externals, the cross around your neck, the kind of sari that you wear, the color of sari that you use, then I don't think it's saying too much. So who are you is a question about your identity. That you do these things is a question about your ministry. And that you do them in this way is a question of your way of proceeding. So identity, ministry, and way of proceeding are three in which we can live. And so the first, who are you? I'm going to suggest three qualities which I would like you to keep in mind, and especially as you continue to cope with the aftermath of the pandemic. And the first of these three qualities is to be positive. Sisters, any one of us can be negative or critical or criticize very easily. It does not take much intelligence. It does not take much knowledge. It does not take much reading to keep criticizing people, to see the black spot on the white wall. And often, unfortunately, that is where our eyes go. Our eyes go to the black spot. There's a beautiful white wall. We forget to take in the whiteness. We forget to take in the beauty of the whiteness, and we look at the black spot. Our eyes, unfortunately, go to the half empty part of the glass or bottle rather than the half filled part. And even if it is half filled, we should think of filling it. If it is only half filled, let me fill it. And some psychologists say that it takes 7 positive statements. 7, imagine, to counter 1 negative. It's so easy, my sisters, to pull someone down. It's so easy to be negative. It's so easy to be criticism. I mean, critical, not critical, but so much to criticize. Because you can be critical without criticizing. And so the first is positive and optimistic. Supposing I cannot look at something positively or optimistically, it is better if I remain quiet rather than if I am negative. Sometimes you may say, but it's so difficult to see the positive in this person, or to see the positive in her way of proceeding, to see the positive in the manner in which she talks, in what she does. Okay, I agree with you. But if you cannot, then my suggestion would be keep quiet. And more importantly, pray for her or him. Pray. Because I believe that your prayers will have a fantastic effect. So my first, that you must be seen always by those who encounter you. You must be seen as a positive person, as an optimistic person. Sisters, please keep in mind, positivity and optimism are also realistic. So don't be a fool. Don't live in a dreamland. I don't mean that if you are positive and optimistic, you're living in dreamland. No. You can be positive, you can be optimistic, and you can be very real and down to earth. So adopt this attitude of being positive, of being optimistic, and also at the same time of being real and down to earth, not living in an ivory tower, not living up in the air. The second, sisters, is hope. The reason why I've chosen this picture is to show you that how even from this earth, this rock, this star, where there seems to be no life at all, nothing can grow, this beautiful, delicate, wonderful flower has come out. Hope. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 and 2 give us what is known as the classic definition of faith. In Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 to 2, we are told the definition of faith in these words. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. The assurance, I am sure I am going to get it. I am sure, I am confident. And I am convinced that even though I don't see, it will be. You know, sisters, when a seed is planted in the ground, and at the end of the year, you are told that you are transferred to another place. And you planted the seed in the ground last year. And for 1 year, it is grown now. Now it's a plant. You may never, in the next few years, because you're very far away from the place where you were, you may never see the tree grow, and yet, because you planted it, because you nurtured it, it will grow. And maybe one day, 15 years later, you come back to this place and the tree will be there. That is what I mean by hope. And we don't necessarily have to see the tree for me to plant the seed. I plant the seed in the hope that the tree will grow. That is the meaning of hope. Because if I don't plant the seed, there is no chance whatever. There is no chance whatever of the tree growing. It is likely that I may plant the seed, I may nurture it while I am there. When I go away, somebody stops watering it, it may die. That's another story. However, there is the likelihood that if I plant, it might grow. However, if I don't plant at all, it is surely not going to grow, whether somebody waters or does not water it. And that's why it's better to sow the seed, hopeful, and resilience. Sisters, in Luke chapter 18, verses 1 to 8. Jesus gives a very beautiful example of resilience, of persistence, of perseverance when he speaks about the widow who goes to the judge for justice. And Jesus is very clear, the judge is a harsh man. The judge cares neither for God, nor does he care for human beings. But the widow, weak as she is, and I say weak because at the time of Jesus, widows were pushed into the background. Widows were those who never had a male to support them, and so therefore they were a very, very vulnerable group. This widow, however, will not allow the vulnerability to affect her. She keeps going to the judge. She will not stop. She will be relentless in her pursuit of justice. She is resilient. She is regular. She is sure that she will get justice. And later, the judge says, I don't fear God. I don't fear human beings. However, if I don't give this widow what she wants, she's going to kill me with her persistence, with her perseverance. So it is her persistence, her perseverance, not the question of justice, not the question of God, not the question of human beings. It's her persistence, her perseverance, which results in the widow getting justice. And so resilience, perseverance, persistence are all synonyms. They are the meaning, the same thing. This is what we require. And in a negative way, it means never, never giving up, never giving in, never saying die, never saying, it doesn't matter. I'm lost. I give up. Giving up must never be an option. So who are you? I would suggest these three. These are, of course, only a starting point for something which you can use for your own reflection and take further. That you do these things. Sisters, all of you are living in a religious community. In some communities, there are more people. In some communities, fewer people. But whatever your community is, first, these things must be done within the community. It is likely that there are some in your community, young, old, middle-aged, whatever, who are finding this time difficult. Believe me when I say, sisters, every single day I get at least minimum three or four phone calls from people who are lonely. I get 5 or 6 emails from people who say, Father, please pray for me. I'm on the verge of giving up. I get on my Facebook page numerous people who write to me, Father, I don't know what to do. I'm becoming so weak. So you see, people are giving up, on the verge of giving up in many places, and they might be in your own community. And so whether it is the younger, whether the middle-aged, whether the elderly, I think you have a responsibility to all to bring that optimism, to bring that joy within the community. And because I know you, sisters, that you are engaged in a variety of ministries, I'm going to give you 3-pronged approach to your ministry outside. And the first of these, sisters, is physical help. I know this is something which many religious in various parts of India and various parts of the world are engaged in, and this is wonderful. If you can give this physical help, especially to the poor, especially the marginalized, search, sisters, search for ways and means in which you can reach out. At the same time, take care of yourself, so you don't become a danger to your community because you're so boldly going out. Make sure you wash your hands. Make sure you avoid touching your face when you come from outside. Make sure that you take care of your personal hygiene, but reach out physically. It's a good way. It's a practical way. It's a way which millions of people need now. This is for those who are engaged in the social ministry, in the ministry practically reaching out to people outside. Many of you I know are teachers in schools, in colleges, in other places. Sisters, you have to make a study, a reflection. You have to read thoroughly not only the NEP, not only the National Educational Policy, which the Prime Minister has said will begin from 2022. So you still have a little time, but you got to ask yourself, as a young sister, as a young religious, how am I going to implement this policy in my school to the best interest of the student and the school and the nation? You must be able to be critical of the policy and to be able to use the policy so that you can enhance your institution, you can enhance the students, you can enhance also the country. And the third is social media. One very, very easy way to reach the youth, at least in cities, in many, many cities, and now even in villages, because even in villages now, this is becoming more and more the way of communicating, is through social media. What are you doing on social media in order to reach out to so many whom you can reach out to? Even putting a small positive statement, whether on your WhatsApp, whether on your Facebook, whether anywhere, wherever you are available on social media, whatever you have, sending an email, for example, to your students, sending a message, for example, to your companions and friends, something which is positive, something which is enhancing, something which will give hope. And you don't have to do something extraordinary or great. You don't have to make a film, for example. No, a small saying which you read somewhere, which you can formulate yourself, which you can do and help on social media. So you do these things. And finally, that you do them in this way. Sisters, one of the main things that you notice people are today is they are being very, very, very creative. A small example. If you're watching television and you're watching even the news, you will get advertisements. And what you notice about the advertisements is this: now there's a new company which is coming out without touching, you can put your lights on. Because the touch, you might touch the switch, you might touch your nose, you might get COVID. So they say, don't touch anything. Just clap your hands and the lights come on. Clap your hands and the lights go off. Put your hand under the tap and the water will flow. Remove your hand and the water stops. So now this is what I call creativity. Sanitizers. People are selling sanitizers left, right, and center because that's what they know. Packaging. They say, don't worry about this. Packaging is safe. So they are going into packaging. Transporting goods to you. You're scared to go out. Don't worry. You tell us what you want. We'll bring it to your home. So delivery agents. So in other words, so many people are using the creativity even in this lockdown period to reach out and to make money. If you look, for example, at the number of people who are offering programs to young children, storytelling for children, for example, fairy tales for children, for example, how to tell a story, how to write a story, how to make artwork. They are showing the sisters and they are charging money, 200 rupees per hour, 300 rupees per hour. Each person who comes in, 300 per hour. So the creativity. Are we able to be creative in this way? In this way means, once again, sisters, our reaching out must be primarily, we reach out to those who can access social media, and they will often be the middle class, upper middle class, or rich. That's another story. That's one group. But we must not forget the vulnerable. And third, you can use your phone to help many, many youngsters today who are crying out for help. There are people on the verge of suicide. They can see no hope for themselves. They want to give up. They want to give in. And so you can use your phone, you can use your internet, you can use your mobile for helping these young children. In Luke chapter 16, verse 18, Jesus is telling his disciples a parable. And in the parable, he tells them about a dishonest manager. And the dishonest manager is such a shrewd person that he makes provisions when he's going to be thrown out of his business. So he makes provisions already, plans for the future. He's not obsessed, but he plans in the present, he plans for the future. One way to find out what it means to plan in the present for the future, but not to be obsessed with the future, is to read this parable, Luke 16, 1-7. Beautiful distinction of what it means to plan, but not to be obsessed. Luke 12, which I quoted earlier, the rich fool is obsessed. Here, in Luke 16, 1-7, this dishonest manager is planning, not obsessed. And Jesus ends the parable with this phrase, sentence, which I want you to understand. For the children of this world, that means the people outside, not we religious. For the children of this world, those who are giving these courses, for example, to children on how to act in a play, of how to write a play, of telling stories, those people, the children of this world, are more astute, are smarter. More astute means smarter in dealing with their own. They know how to charge money for these courses. They know how to take people for a ride than are the children of light. So Jesus seems to be saying that when it comes to reaching out in this manner, to be creative, to be original, we seem to be very much behind. And it is quite evident. One reason I would like to believe is possibly this, that those people have to struggle for a living. That if they don't do this, if they are not creative enough, they may not eat tomorrow. So it's likely that because of this, they cannot be irrelevant like we are. So sometimes we may be in the field of education, but we might still be very, very irrelevant. And so our students tell us that they cannot trust our information because we are using such outdated technology. We are not in keeping with the movement of the world. You're not keeping with the movement of the times, and we are saying, no, but I'm getting my food, I'm getting my accommodation, I have my job, so I will continue. I don't need to bother so much. But the people outside, they will not eat if they are not creative. They will not be able to drink water, and they will not be able to live and pay their rent if they are not creative. So they have to be creative. And that's why what we need to do is this. When we are dealing with these people, we need to go in by their door and come out by our door. So we need to enter, be as creative as they are, and then come out from our door, tell them about values like justice, peace, and love. And for this, we need clarity of perception. And if our perception is clear, then our response will be clear. And so finally, sisters, I want to offer you a practical lesson for life. And this practical lesson for life is in 4 stages. It is a parable which is told by Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. And what is special about this parable is this, that it is found only in the Gospel of Mark and in no other Gospel. And the parable is this. The first stage of the 4 is that the person, Jesus, does not use the word farmer. Jesus does not use the word sower. He simply says a person. In the original Greek, it is anthropos, which is translated in English as man, but it could be a woman. So a person, a man or a woman, scatters the seed, the first step. What does it mean to scatter the seed? Scattering the seed is once again a metaphor for doing what you are meant to do. A small example. Now, I am meant to give this class to you. So for me, scattering the seed will mean this: making sure my Zoom is working properly, making sure my slides are all ready, making sure that I ask you if you can see my screen, making sure that I ask you if you can hear my voice. So scattering the seed means you do what you have to do. So whether you are teaching a class, whether you are going out to reach out to people on the road and on the streets and providing them with a meal or meal packets, whether you are helping people in a dispensary as a nurse, tending to patients, whatever, you do what you have to do. In other words, leave no stone unturned. So the meaning of the words "a man or a woman scatters the seed" means the person concerned does everything that is required. The person will leave nothing undone. Don't say God will do it. No, I said let God be in the heavens, let God be God. We do what we have to do. The second is, notice, it follows from the first. Because I have done all that I was meant to do, because I have left no stone unturned, because I have done everything I could do and ought to have done, because I have done that, I sleep at night. There is no insomnia. There is no restlessness. There is no lack of sleep. I don't get up at night. I am sleeping soundly at night. And again, what follows is because I have slept soundly at night, I am awake in the day. Not only do I rise in the day, but I am fully alive in the day. Look at my eyes, how aware I am of what is going on around me. And why is it so? Because I have slept soundly at night. And how is it that I was able to sleep soundly at night? Because I scattered the seed. So the first step, I do all that is required of me. The second step, I sleep at night. The third, I get up in the day. And the fourth, because one follows another, the seed grows. This lesson, I believe, is the secret for a totally happy life. This lesson, I believe, will help us to live totally and completely in this COVID-19 situation. Even in the midst of the pandemic, I do not bother about tomorrow. I do what I have to do today. I scatter the seed. And if I scatter the seed, that is, do all that is required of me now, then the other three steps will follow. Namely, I will sleep at night, I will rise and be awake in the day, and the seed will indeed grow. However, it is likely that up to now, this is what I have been doing. That is, I have not been scattering the seed. And because I did not scatter the seed, because I did not do what I am meant to do, what I was supposed to do, because there were many stones which I left unturned, I am awake at night. Insomnia. I need sleeping tablets to go to sleep. I am unable to sleep. I'm so restless. The whole night I have not slept. And obviously, if I have not slept at night, if I was restless at night, if I had insomnia, if I could not sleep when I ought to have slept, then I am sleepy in the day. Not that I sleep in the day, because I really cannot even get sleep in the day, but I'm not alert. I'm not myself. I don't know what is happening. So the night is wasted and the day is wasted. And why? Following from the first step. I have not scattered the seed. So I'm awake at night. Because I was awake at night, I am not aware in the day. And worse, the seed does not grow. And so